Hi, in this video, we will demonstrate end-to-end configuration as code using Layer7 gateways deployed in a Kubernetes cluster, a Kubernetes operator, and the Graphman API. The assets you're going to see as part of this demo are available to Layer7 Gateway customers. The Graphman API itself is built into the Layer7 Gateway. The Graphman tooling is this public repo, and the operator is a repo that is available by invitation. Please contact us for that. And even the use cases of configuration as code I'm going to show you are basically all available in these public repos here. The configuration as code scenario consists of 3 separate layers of configuration. This is inspired by what some of our most advanced customers are doing today. Each of these layers has its own potential lifecycle and is meant to be owned by separate teams. And once these assets, these configuration sources of truth are created, they can be used directly without prior layer 7 knowledge or any dependencies such as a thick client like policy manager or even something like a development gateway. Let's take a look at our development gateway here. We have the list of APIs under this My APIs folder, and then we have another folder, Bootstrapable Framework, that has policies, there's JDBC connections, and in particular, there's these cluster-wide properties that control subscriptions. You can actually call one of those APIs in Postman here. Here's my development host /API1. I pass a client ID, and then you notice how I now belong in plan B, and there's this demo config value here. So now if we switch those repos, those configuration source of truth, you'll see the same gateway configuration. For example, in this framework, you see all the JDBC connections, all of those policies that we're talking about. And then there's another repo that controls the APIs. And in that repo, the only thing you have is those JSON files for these separate APIs. So every configuration entity has its own file. And then if you look at the subscriptions one, you only get those 3 JSON files that control those subscription memberships. They're part of the logic, but separated out in its own layer. So the first thing we're going to do is use the graphman-client connected to our development gateway, and we're going to use that to create those configuration source of truth. And then we're going to go on our Kubernetes cluster, and we're going to have our gateway custom resource refer to these sources of truth instead of having those gateways connected to a cluster database. So I've got my graphman-client here. It's configured to talk to my development gateway in here, and so I'm just going to do a very basic export of all my configuration out of my development gateway, and that's going to go in this my bundle.json file. So let's go take a look at that. And sure enough, you get a bundle in JSON format of all the configuration entities. Now, if we scroll down the README of the client, we see there's this explode command. So we can take this bundle and explode it into a folder called My Repo. And if we take a look at that, now you get those configuration entities separated each in their individual JSON file. And that's exactly what those repos I was showing you earlier are constructed from. So in our case, we use the explode export all query, which gives us the entire configuration, and we can use that as a starting point and manually separate things out. But the other thing that you can do is, instead of exporting everything, you can use the specialized GraphQL queries that will basically point to only the configuration you want to include in a particular repo. All right, now let's switch to my Kubernetes cluster where my operator is running. And inside the operator repo, you can see this SSG gateway custom resource, which has the Layer7 Gateway image. And instead of the MySQL cluster, you can see these repository references that point to the public repos, right? So here's the same address that I was showing you in the introduction. So basically, the repositories are their own resources, and the gateway pods are pointing to these repository references. And the operator is responsible for maintaining that. So if I do a get pods here, you can see the gateway and the operator running. And if I go back and hit the API, but instead of hitting my dev API, I'm hitting my Kubernetes deployment here, my target environment. You can see back that response coming back. In the next use case, we've got a business unit that doesn't have any layer 7 expertise, and they're going to use their own BU specific tool to change that list of subscriptions in that source of truth. So here I've got the subscriptions repo that I've cloned, and you can see those three configuration entities. I can just take my client here, BU1. I'm going to take it out of the Plan C membership, and in this case, I'm just going to go and add this to the Plan A membership. Again, I'm a BU here. I don't have any Layer 7 expertise or awareness even. I just make this very simple change, and I can line this up for a commit. And I've got, you can see the two files here that are changing. So I'm going to do a commit with message. But before I actually push this to the repo, I'm going to tail the log of the Kubernetes operator just so you see what's happening there. Okay, let's push that commit. So you can see in the background, the operator detected the change in a source of truth and did the actual change onto the gateway. So remember, I was on Plan C here according to my client. If I send this again, because the subscription changed now, wow, we're in Plan A. So the configuration of the gateway was updated by the operator. Okay, so for the last use case, we're going to do a much more dramatic change of configuration here. So you've got IT, which is going to make a change to the framework configuration source of truth. If you remember, the framework configuration source of truth is more lower level. It's what all the services depends on, and it's actually classified as a static source of truth. And so the operator is going to apply this, and because it's static, it's going to require the operator to recycle the gateways that are running. So that config value at the bottom here in my API responses, that comes from that framework layer, which is a static source of truth. So we can just go straight into the GitHub repo and change that, the value of that variable. So right now it's a suspicious llama. Let's change this to thanks for watching. And before we actually commit this, we're going to not only tail the log of the Layer7 operator, but we're also going to watch the pods, because remember, this is static configuration, meaning that those pods are going to have to restart. Okay, so now we push that big change in the framework, come back to the operator. Right away, you can see the operator started detecting this, and it's going to start applying it. And as part of that, you're going to see in a second here that our gateway pod, a new one is being initialized, and the old one is being terminated. And once this is ready, basically you're gonna be only left with the latest version of the pod running. And if I go back to my API call, instead of suspicious llama, I send this again. Lo and behold, thanks for watching. And there you go. And so there you have it. This is how you apply configuration as code with the Layer7 Gateway running in Kubernetes. This is where you get the assets. And thanks so much for watching.